I have made videos covering every single Leviathan, living or dead, in the world of Subnautica, and after diving deep into 45-46b seas, I'm going to give you my ultimate worst to first Leviathan tier list. Not including any fossils or dead ones, that doesn't really seem fair, as they're not here to defend themselves. Now, I'm not going to be using stats or statistics or even how many teeth they have to decide each Leviathan's place on this list. I'm just going to rank them based on how much I personally like them, so obviously your list might be different to mine, so be sure to let me know your order down below. Coming in as first loser, we have the glow whale. Now, I don't have anything particularly against this creature's design, I just think it's a poor man's reefback. It feels a little too like something we'd see here on Earth, and against everything else on this list, I just find it the least exciting. You do get to pet it, so bonus points for that, and I do like how they jump out of the water with some great acrobatics, but if one Leviathan has to go, for me, this one has to be it. The vent garden. This one was hard to place. It has a cool design and some interesting lore with the creatures anchoring themselves over thermal vents, but as the adults don't actually move in game, they're more like giant plants than what I would call a true Leviathan. It was a tough choice between this and the glow whale, but the reason I gave the vent garden the edge is simply its size and alien-like nature. When first encountering the vent garden, you get a whoa, what is that thing kind of moment, and I don't think you get that with the glow whale. The vent garden gets bonus points for being a unique creature, in that it has a mini self-contained ecosystem inside its bell, which is a really cool concept, but its inability to move in game really brings it down on this list. Now, as we dip our toes in the frozen waters of Sector 0, we might have reached our first controversial ranking on this list. My third least favourite Leviathan is the ice worm. Now I hear you say, Aletho, what did the ice worm do to you to end up so far down on this list? And I think the main problem is that it's only a land-based creature. I like the ice worm's design, and I actually think the creature looks really cool. The general idea of something burrowing through the ice with a superheated horn is terrifying as it is epic, but in gameplay terms, I find the ice worm to just be outright annoying. I don't think anyone would say that Below Zero's land sections were the game's speciality, and I always find myself wanting to get back into the water as soon as possible. Ice worms just aren't particularly fun to encounter, and I find the thrill of an ambush wears off quite quickly once you've ran into them more than a few times. And this one's a YouTuber problem, but because they're only above the ground for a small amount of time, they're a real pain to record. I just wish they could swim like it was hinted at in the Below Zero promotional art, or we had another waterbound Leviathan in Below Zero, as I think the ice worm takes up one of the game's Leviathan slots, but you don't really see it that often, and when you do, you don't really want to anyway. And from the frozen seas to the fiery depths, next on my list I have what is probably going to be my most controversial ranking, the Sea Dragon. The Sea Dragon has always been my least liked Leviathan from the original Subnautica. Compared to the Reaper and the Ghost Leviathan, it just never seemed as cool. I don't think there's anything particularly wrong with the Sea Dragon, I just don't like it as much as everything else on this list. It's not every day that you say the fire-breathing tentacle monster isn't the coolest creature in the game, but in this case I just don't think it is. From a lore perspective, I like how they hunt Reapers and spew molten rock, and they are definitely the most dangerous creature in the game with their ability to snipe you from far away. If there was a neutral rating for this creature, that's what I'd give it. I don't particularly like it, but I don't dislike it either, it's just kind of there. I think it does its job as a late game boss quite well, but as they normally attack you from range, you don't get that primal fear like when a Reaper grabs the front of your Seamoth. This is another one of those creatures that's really annoying to record from a YouTuber's perspective because the lava zone is so dark, so that might have swayed my opinion against it, or maybe I've just become desensitized to the creature over time. Overall, the Sea Dragon gets a meh from me. From the bottom of the crater to the bottom of Sector 0, the next creature on my list is the Shadow Leviathan. Now this one I actually rank pretty similarly to the Sea Dragon. I like the creature's design, and having a glowing acid dripping mouth that sucks you straight into its stomach definitely gives the creature an air of awesomeness that most other creatures on this list fail to match. What I like most about the Shadow Leviathan is how unique the creature looks, and it really feels like something you would find in the deep dark depths of the ocean where no light or no one would dare to go. The creature's reinforced arrow-like head and long claws definitely give it an intimidating look, and there's no candidate like it when it comes to deciding who to give the horrifying space alien award to on this list. My main issue with the Shadow Leviathan is that you don't really ever get to see it. It's locked away in the last few areas of Below Zero, so you don't really get to play with it for very long before the game ends. Maybe that's kept it exotic, and that's why I've ranked it above the Sea Dragon for me. I just wish it had a bigger role in the game and didn't get stuck on the environment so much, as that really brings down the fear factor. Stomping its way onto this list, next up we have the Sea Treader, and despite being the smallest creature on this list at around 20 meters tall, I think the Sea Treader punches way above its weight on the ranking of Subnautica's Leviathans. The Sea Treader makes 45-46b feel like a real world. It's the only Leviathan to walk on the seafloor, and I think that really makes it stand out from all the other creatures on this list. It feels like a creature that could really exist on some far off planet, and proves that being the biggest doesn't necessarily make you the best. If you miss the Sea Treader path, you will never even encounter this creature in game, and that was me on my first playthrough, and discovering it later on felt like a hidden gem of world building that I really appreciate. Knowing these majestic creatures are migrating around the seafloor and living their lives regardless of whatever you're up to really helps to bring the game to life, and proves just like here on Earth, just because a creature is big, it doesn't necessarily want to eat you, and for that reason I really like the Sea Treader. I'd love to see more creatures that walk or scuttle along the seafloor introduced in the future, maybe a giant crab or lobster, and if all of that doesn't have you convinced, the Sea Treader is also the only creature to poop. Next on my list is the Chelicerae, and this one is actually a bit of a comeback king. When I first played through Below Zero, I didn't like the Chelicerae too much. I felt like it was everywhere, and the game lacked many other hostile Leviathans which took away from the overall experience, which I still think is true. But I've come to like this red boy more and more as time has gone on. I think the creature's bright colour really helps it stand out, and I like the way it looks. As a standalone creature, I really like the Chelicerae, and I think the Void version is pretty cool too. I think my main issue is that it's a little bit overused in Below Zero, but that's more of a critique of Below Zero itself rather than the creature. I was honestly quite surprised that the Chelicerae has ended up so high on this list, but after thinking hard about the other Leviathans, I think it's fair to give it the 5th spot. As much as I like the Sea Treader, I think the Chelicerae offers more in gameplay terms, and if someone was to show me a picture of the two creatures without any prior knowledge, I'd be picking the Chelicerae. As we head back closer to the surface and the safe shallows of 45-46 BCs, we encounter the Leviathan that's just missed out on a medal. The Reefback always reminds me of home. Its familiar calls mark a return to safety and brings a strange level of comfort to a weary diver. The Reefback is one of those creatures that when you first see it, you recoil in horror at how big it is and wonder if it might eat you, but as you spend more time getting to know them, you realise that they're actually gentle giants. They protect life with the plants on their back, and they can even carry you when on the surface. These submerged islands have to be one of my favourite creatures in the game. They're alien and majestic in equal measure, and while they may not have a huge amount of interactivity or direct gameplay, I just really like them, and I think they have truly earned their place on this list. For the 3rd place medal, we find ourselves at Journey's End. The Sea Emperor is Subnautica's ultimate creature, a life-giver and preserver that sustains everything in the crater, a telepathic behemoth that holds the fate of a planet in its hands. I've struggled to find a good place for the Sea Emperor on this list. The creature is unique due to its position in Subnautica's plot, but it also shares a lot of the same design elements as the Sea Dragon. The Sea Emperor ultimately makes the story of Subnautica possible, but I think I prefer the design of the Reefback. I just don't think the Sea Emperor looks as good. The thing that gives the Sea Emperor its edge is its personal story of tragedy, loss, and ultimately victory in spite of the odds stacked against it. Once the baby Sea Emperors are released into the world and grow into juveniles, I think they're a little underwhelming, as they don't really do anything, which is the same for the Mother Sea Emperor, who's only ever stuck in an aquarium and swimming around in circles. But everything about the Mother Sea Emperor's story gives the species its place on this list, even if from a gameplay or visual perspective, the species isn't my favourite. The next Leviathan might be keeping you up at night, or at least might feature in a late night horror flick, and that's because our silver medal goes to none other than the Ghost Leviathan. This creature has always been one of my favourites, and I still remember encountering one for the first time when diving in the Lost River in my Cyclops. Back then I was terrified of getting too close, but after spending some time together, me and Ghosty are now the best of friends. Its bioluminescent design and giant body make the Ghost Leviathan one of the planet's most standout creatures, and nothing can make the hairs on the back of your neck stand up quite like the scream of a Ghost Leviathan. Lore-wise, the Ghost Leviathan is one of the creatures we know the most about, from laying its eggs in the giant cove tree to outgrowing the crater and being forced to live in the void. The Ghost Leviathan always was and still remains one of my favourite creatures on 45-46B, and is worthy of the runner-up medal on this list. And now the king ascends his throne, as if there could ever have been any doubt as who was going to be number 1 on this list. My ultimate Subnautica Leviathan is the Reaper, the game's most iconic creature and credited by the developers themselves as being one of the main reasons the game succeeded financially. Whether that's terrifying first-time streamers or creeping up on grizzled Subnautica veterans, the roar of a Reaper is unmatched when instilling fear in Subnautica players. The Reaper's design is perfectly alien, and it's the creature to send you scurrying home to the safe shallows with your tail between your legs when you try to get too close to the Aurora. The Reaper being the first truly huge dangerous creature that you encounter gives it a unique place in the memory of everyone who plays Subnautica, and for some who find the game just too scary, it might be the only hostile Leviathan they ever see. Its tough mandibles, razor-sharp teeth and super speed make this Subnautica's ultimate danger noodle, and there's nothing else quite like it. It might not do as much damage as a sea sea dragon, or be as long as a ghost Leviathan, but the classic Reaper takes the crown as Subnautica's ultimate Leviathan for me. Wait, I think all the Leviathans are angry at me because I didn't give them the #1 spot on my list, and the Reaper's just joining in for fun. You'll need to click right here to check out all the videos I've made on them if you don't want to end up as fish food, as once they're done with me, they'll be coming for you next. And special thanks to my patrons, Asmodeus Matthias, Graham DeLoye, Baron Windy, and Xander Kohler for making this video possible.